This is a Yongnuo YN560 Mark IV Speedlite flash unit. This guy costs $85 MSRP. I've seen it with coupons as low as $76. I have been given this unit to review for free, but they have not paid me for my review, so my opinion remains my own. So in the box you have a user's manual, and from the length of this you can tell that this guy has a decent number of features. A little card here, and a carry case that has a little bit of padding, Velcro, no belt loop. So there's a small pocket in the back where you have this accessory mounting shoe system here, where you can snap it in here and just set it down, or it has a tripod adapter. So it can stand as a remote flash unit, or it can be mounted on a tripod as a remote flash unit. It also has, of course, your hot shoe mounting plate here. I'm definitely going to have to read the manual and learn what the heck I can do with this thing before I talk more about it.
Alright, I've been playing around with this guy for a while, and I'm pretty impressed. It's a quite capable flash unit. So first of all, it takes 4 AA batteries, and they say not to use lithium batteries. You should use alkaline or NiMh, which is what I'm using. If you have an external power supply, you can also power it externally, and it has a sync line in. Now, to turn it on, you have to press and hold the on-off button while this thing goes all the way across, and then it will turn on. To turn it off, you have to press and hold while those things go across. So in the advanced settings, you can set it so it'll do instant on and instant off, but that's not the default, so that it won't automatically, you won't accidentally turn on in your bag if something just hits it. So by default, you have regular flash, and you can adjust with these arrows the power. So 1 out of 1 is full power, and then 1/128th is the lowest power. It also has a zoom setting here, and so it's set by default to 24mm, which is the kind of widest flash that it has. Now, if you need something wider than that, you can pull out the diffuser here. So that diffuser pulls out and then it pops in. I guess my only big complaint about this guy is the difficulty in pulling the diffuser and the bounce card out. I've been playing with this for a couple of days, and it is not easy to do that. That was actually probably the best time I've ever had doing it. You can pull them out, it works, but sometimes you're sitting there and you're fiddling around with it, and getting your fingernail in just the right spot is kind of annoying, I think. So if you want to use a bounce card, you can pop this guy straight up. It has built-in bounce card there. It's not super big, but it's better than not having anything. So obviously you can point this at your subject, or you can bounce it off the ceiling. Now, if you change the zoom, it has inside an electronic element that moves the zoom. So as I push this button, you'll probably be able to see it retract. It's moving up, forward there, and so that's 24, and then it goes back farther and farther back as it tries to basically zoom in your flash. And so that is done by a little motor, and it handles that for you. Okay, so that's the standard mode. If you hit mode again, you can get multi-flash mode. So in multi-flash mode, you can adjust the power as normal. You push and hold the middle OK button, and it will jump to the number of times. So if you want to, for example, take 10 flashes at 60 hertz. So basically in 1/6 of a second, it'll flash 10 times. You can set it like that. And this is useful if you want to stop time and do a multiple exposure. So you set your shutter to something like a 1/6 of a second, and when you push the shutter in, it's going to flash 10 times in that 1/6 of a second. And so if you're, for example, photographing a drop of water falling, you can actually see the drop of water every 60th of a second as this flash goes off. So that's the multi-flash mode. Now, there is also the link and wireless mode. So it has the ability to transmit or act as a receiver, and of course it has to be, you know, one of the compatible FR2 or FR3 units, but it'll do radio syncing, so you can have a group of these flash at the same time. I don't have another one, so I can't test that. Then it has the Slave 1, Slave 2 mode. So this is basically using the optical sensor in the front. When it detects a flash going off, it will flash. So the Slave 1 flashes immediately. The Slave 2 ignores the first flash and goes for the second flash. So that's the through the lens, where you're doing exposure through the lens. It basically ignores your first flash for the exposure check, and then it flashes on the second flash. So that works really well with my Sony a6300. It has a tiny little pop-up flash, and this guy detects that very well, and so you can have a secondary flash off to the side, and this guy fires. Also, of course, it works, you know, in the shoot, so the hot shoot there, it just flashes on the camera. So those are the major features. There are some advanced things you can set up, how fast it sleeps, and, you know, the on off being, you know, not super fast. There's a lot of modes having to do with the wireless. You can have different groups. I haven't tested any of the wireless flash a bit here. There's a light here. When it's red, it's ready to go. When it's blue, it's charging. If you push it, it'll do a test flash. You know, and you can turn on and off the sounds. I personally don't like the sounds, but if you push and hold for a long time, it has a sound indicator here, and that basically says, hey, there's a specific sound for everything it does, and so it'll kind of keep you informed of what it's doing by ear. I don't like it. I find it annoying. But if you're trying to keep up, I could see that being potentially possible. Also, there's a backlight for this display. And so if you turn that off, the display is almost unreadable here inside. But you can be, you know, taking pictures in the dark without having the display on. So those are the major features. It is a very capable flash unit. I'm pretty impressed with it. So if you're looking for a pretty powerful, pretty big flash unit, this one's a good choice. It also has a micro USB port. That is for firmware upgrades from the factory. I haven't found a need to upgrade the firmware yet, but it does support that if necessary. So from a power standpoint, I have found this guy to be more powerful than I need in almost all of my situations. I find myself setting this to 128 or, you know, 1/64th from the power, as opposed to 1. And I've found myself, you know, dialing, you know, the exposure time down, setting my ISO lower, closing up my aperture, just so I don't wash things out with this flash. So it has a good range, and it can cover a large area if you need to. So this guy here weighs in at 464 grams, and, you know, that's a significant weight. It's not quite as heavy as my camera, but it's basically almost doubling the weight in the hand. Alright, I'm pretty happy with this flash unit. There are some downsides. It doesn't have the intelligent connection to the Sony camera, so it's not Sony specific, and it doesn't communicate with the camera. And so when you're in auto mode, your camera will generally be washed out because this flash is providing a lot more light than the camera was expecting. So you typically, in auto mode, you'd put it up to the ceiling, light up the whole room without like washing everything out. Now, if you're setting it to a manual mode where you're programming your settings, you can get a setting that works well with it, and it works great for that. It's especially good, you know, for studio setups where you're doing something and you're dialing in your settings manually. You know exactly what you want. I found especially for, you know, taking multiple exposures of fast-moving things and having them, you know, be frozen in time, something like that. The speed, you know, the strobe mode's really interesting to use. So this gives you a lot of light at a relatively inexpensive price. You know, if you need a slave flash just off to the side or something with your regular units, it's a very nice addition to a camera just to be able to put a lot of light out there when you need to.